Good afternoon. I hope everyone is well. Um, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Terry Locklear, and I'm from the Office of Online Learning. And this presentation is called Fostering Innovative Student-to-Student Collaboration in Online Courses. So while we're participating in this presentation, I would like for us to have a group discussion kind of in a different format. And I've asked Dr. Nino to post a document in the chat on my behalf, and it's a Google Doc. So the main question in this document is that I'm posing is how or does student-to-student interaction vary? Does it vary, for example, by discipline or by course level? And if you have an opinion on this, I would like for you to type your response in a different font or a different color than others, and talk about how interaction may be a little bit different in your arena based on discipline, course level, or any other type of attribute you would like to add there. So I like to think of myself as a computer person, and when I think of interaction, when I was thinking about this topic, I thought about servers and how computers interact with the world. So you've got server-based communication, which is typically just a computer talking and interacting with a server, and then you've got peer-to-peer interaction that can take place among different computer networks. So that's kind of how I thought about this, and the way it looks in a classroom is um, is kind of like this. You've got instructor-led interaction where the students are interacting directly with the teacher, and it's only teacher-student interaction. But you've also got peer-to-peer interaction, which is what we want to discuss here, which is how can we foster interaction from the faculty member? How can he foster, or this individual foster student-to-student communication and student-to-student interaction? So while while researching this, I came across a number of scholarly articles, and Koloff in 2011 noted that student-to-student interaction is vital to building community in an online environment, which supports productive and satisfying learning and helps students develop problem-solving and critical thinking skills. And as a university, as a liberal arts institution, that critical thinking and problem-solving skills is very important to us. And in a different study by Swan in 2002, this author found that students who had high levels of interaction with other students reported high levels of high levels of satisfaction in learning as well. And in another study by Robler and Exam in 2000, they found that interaction has an impact on student achievement and satisfaction, and that's also reflected by test performance grades and student satisfaction as well. Let me go back one slide. So something that I want to show you here is one author um, actually developed a rubric for measuring satisfaction. And if I can get it here on the screen, one second. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so this was an article. This was a researcher that actually developed a rubric for measuring interaction in an online course, and it's a points-based system. And I'm going to actually share this with you in the group activity document as well. Was this group activity document posted?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the document that's actually linked from there. So this is linked, and you can use it to in your own courses to measure. And it goes from the scale varies from 1 point all the way to 5 points in actually measuring the level of interactivity in online courses. And I think that's an interesting way for you to kind of self-assess. So in terms of rapport building, there's 3 areas we want to take a look at here: rapport building, instructional activities, and use of technology. To achieve a high level of student-to-student interaction in an online course, students must have many opportunities to build rapport. This is often accomplished by providing socially focused exchanges such as guided introductions, exchanges of personal information, and participation in activities designed to increase social rapport. Instructional activities that encourage reflection and discussion, student-to-student interaction online. These activities require students to work with one another, share results, and go beyond the typical introduction. So a number of technologies can support student-to-student interaction in online courses. To promote this interaction, we ask that instructors select appropriate technologies for the course goals and students to engage effectively. So in Canvas, you can actually have, when we think about student-to-student interaction, we think about group work. So that's one of the ways in which we can foster that type of interaction. And in Canvas, on the left-hand side, you'll see the people link. You can go to people and create project groups from there. So if you want to create a group project, you're going to go to people, and then on the top right, click group set. So you would create a group set, and you can either manually create groups, or you can allow the system to create those groups for you. And when they are created, this is kind of what they look like within Canvas. This process actually kind of creates a small Canvas course for individual groups, which is interesting as well. But there's some considerations when you're doing group projects, and there's some things to think about. It may present some dilemmas. Do you typically, if you're going to have a group project, 1 grade per group, how do you assess? Do you say everybody in the group gets the same grade? You may also want to ask students to track their meetings, and have some kind of documentation, or you could even have them meet through Webex and maybe record those meetings. And you can also, maybe another option, to ask students to anonymously evaluate group members. If you don't want to give 1 grade per, or 1 grade to the group, you can ask students to evaluate each other anonymously and then distribute grades in that manner. So let's talk about an asynchronous way to have student-to-student interaction. For example, one software is called VoiceThread, and if you've used, some of you maybe used VoiceThread before, but if not, the website is just voicethread.com. So essentially, you can think of it as a discussion board almost, but instead of typing responses, students are just using their voice and making small voice recordings to respond to a question. It's kind of an impromptu discussion, really almost replicating the experience that you would have in class. So that's VoiceThread, voicethread.com. We can also talk about how to do this in the synchronous world. So how can we do this in a synchronous environment? So when we think of Webex, we think of a Webex session like we're in now, but there's also something called a Webex training session that you can access and you can create, which gives you a little bit more flexibility and allows you to have way more options than we have in a typical Webex. So let me show you how that looks. I'm going to go to uncp.webex.com. Okay. And I'm going to sign in. So normally when we start a Webex session, we would just go here, right, and click start a meeting or schedule a meeting. But what I'm talking about here is actually going to be a Webex training session. So instead of just doing a normal session, you come here on the bottom left and click Webex trainings, okay? So what we want to do is we want to schedule a training session. So you'll notice that it opens that we have different tabs here, and we're in the Webex training tab, and we're going to click on schedule training. Okay, so with a training session, you would want to add a topic. You can also have the option to add if it's going to have more than 500 attendees, which is not likely. But really, the part that I want to showcase in this presentation is the option to have breakout sessions. So essentially, these with these Webex training sessions, you have the ability to have breakout sessions. So breakout sessions are, I'm not sure if you've ever used them before, but it's basically like if you have a class of maybe 30 students, you can say, I want to have a 20-minute or 10-minute discussion, and I want to split these 30 students up into groups. And you can say, well, I want to automatically assign the number. I want to automatically assign attendees during the session, and I'm going to have X number of breakout sessions. Or you can say, I'm going to set the number of attendees in each session. So you say, well, I want to have maybe 5 per session or something like that. So you'll notice here that using Webex training rather than just a normal session, you'll see that there's numerous options here, a lot more than the normal Webex discussions, normal Webex sessions. So let's open up our document now to see what kind of let's see what kind of responses we have here. Okay, so maybe we have some in the chat, but how do you think that student-to-student interaction can vary based on discipline or course level, or how do you think that looks like, or how do you think that may look different in your discipline? Can you hear me?
Yes, so far we don't have any questions or comments, but if you want, you can unmute your mic.
Right, I just joined in, Terry. There's a variety of different ways I would do my student interactions. But for the simplest, probably just breaking them up into groups of like 4 or 5, depending on how many are in my class.
So that's how you would typically handle it in a face-to-face classroom.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But also online, I would want to break them up. I mean, as far as, I'm trying to understand what you mean by your question, whether it's a discipline or course level.
So what I'm thinking is, in some courses, if it's a maybe like a science or a math course, you may not necessarily require group work or discussion boards or student-to-student interaction. How can it maybe like in a math course, how does a group activity how does that help promote the learning objective, rather than rather than maybe like a social work course where you're drawing upon past experiences and you can have rich discussion that may kind of influence others.
Gotcha. Sure.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Big difference.
Do we have anyone here from the sciences?
I teach it in kinesiology, so not so much the biology and chemistry sciences, but
So we've got a comment from a professor that noted that in the sciences, maybe more like problem solving sorts of activities. So I guess it's more of an objective versus subjective discipline specific type format.
Mhm.
We've also got Professor Stephen Moore here, who's from the School of Business, and I think maybe in some of the business type courses, it may be maybe student to student interaction looks similar to what it is in some of the sciences.
Yeah, we do. Thanks, Terry. We have some pretty big classes in the School of Business. For example, I've got one that we have, because of COVID, we got to teach it in the GPAC, so 125 students. And in our MBA class, I've got one that's almost 300 right now. So we're still struggling. That's why I logged in here. I'm still experimenting with this, having group discussions with such big numbers. And my goal is to try to learn how to grade those and I'm trying to write the rubric for these two large courses to say, okay, if you're going to have a discussion and answer some of the questions I want, but then how do the interactions graded? And I'm still working on it. I'm still trying to learn it. And as far as breakout sessions, we set those up in the MBA class. We have right now I've got almost 300 students in there, and they're teams of 3. So those teams, each team has their own group that I track, that I am part of that group. I log in, I watch their Google documents, their documents. They have one semester long document. And of course, with that many groups, I can't be in every group every week. So about every other week, I'll get to maybe 15 groups in a week and look over what they're putting together. So I'm just working on it. Yeah, I'm grateful for what you guys are doing, and you're just giving me ideas. I don't know if I answered your question. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's the best I can do right now.
Absolutely. So if you click in the chat and open the document, you actually have edit access to that document. So this is one of the ways that we can foster interaction synchronously in an environment in which we're having a social distance. So you can create a shared Google document and ask individuals to post responses to questions in a group activity. So everyone here has edit access to this document. So if you would like to go in and just see what that looks like when adding information to something like this, I think it may add value and show how this sort of document can grow in a synchronous format when everyone is contributing.
So yeah, I can add a little bit more now. You gave me some more information, but one thing that I try to do is keep the students going in the right direction by being included in their Google Docs. Some use OneDrive, It doesn't matter to me, and so I can look and see what they're doing. But another big thing with MBA capstones, sorry, I hate to say it this way, but for lack of a better term, is to identify slackers early on by the professor to see who's not keeping up with the team requirements, because you might get one or two students that are doing all the work in a team. And so we have to, if we're going to say that somebody passes the course, we've got to be able to monitor that and grade it. And that's a little bit of a challenge, especially in the MBA program where their goal is to help each other get an A. That's their, they've kind of learned that as they go along. I don't know if everybody's familiar what we're struggling with right now, but we had 386 new students in the MBA program over the course of the last maybe 3 weeks. New student, new to UNCP. So our numbers, we had caps on the courses, and we've just got to do away with caps. And
okay.
So I know I'm sorry for being long-winded, but I'm not the only one that's dealing with this. We're all saying, well, I just got 25 new students in a course that was capped at 25. So we're sitting here. How are we have to completely change our grading, because with 25 students, you could look at each one individually every week. And when you start hitting 300 students, you cannot possibly look at every one if they've got written assignments every week. You'd be just worked to death. And that's not my only course. I mean, I've got 4 courses, so that's why I logged in today, just to see what kind of tricks are there.
So one of the ways in which we can deal with that, in Canvas is by creating the groups. Going to Canvas and creating the different groups. And instead of, for example, instead of having one big discussion board, right? Maybe create a discussion, or maybe, well, first of all, in order to do something like that, you've got to go to people. You've got to go to people here, and you've got to actually create groups. You've got to create a group set. And first, you may have a group set called discussion 1, right? And here's some of the sort of options you get. But instead of having a big discussion with the entire course, you may want to group discussions up, or you may want to break the discussions up by having smaller groups. So if you've got 50 students where you would typically have 25, even 25, it can kind of get a little bit hard to manage. Break those down into smaller numbers, and maybe have 5 or 6 or 7, per group. And then, ask them all the same question, and then have those groups change each week. So it may be a little bit more work on the end, on the instructor's end up front, but it may actually, doing something like that may certainly make it more manageable for the students as well, because they're experiencing the same sorts of issues with these large classes. So I think it would add value by allowing students to have these smaller groups. They would feel more comfortable, I think, and it would create a much richer experience for them. Does anybody else have any maybe discipline specific issues or course specific? And I think the way that we approach group discussions or group work or fostering student-to-student interaction is going to also vary based on the course level. So the way in which you do that for a freshman class may look much differently than it would in a graduate level course.
I need a type that for math, sciences, more problem solving.
Problem solving, absolutely.
Terry, can I have a comment for Stephen?
Yes, please.
Hey, Stephen.
Hi.
I'm Anita, and I'm in the English department. And in the bad old days of students writing journals by hand, I would say, say I have a class of 25, I'm going to collect and read 5 journals a week, but they don't know who. They don't know when they're going to be called on. In your class of 50, if you had, say, 5 groups of 10, You could say every week, I'm going to monitor 2 different groups. They never know which groups it's going to be which week.
That's
That would
kind
be,
of keep it anonymous. I like that.
that just a thought.
Yeah, yeah. You know, we gotta, and I'm grateful for the comments because, you know, this kicked. I just posted my first class. It's supposed to start tomorrow morning, and I posted a few minutes ago, online class, and then the other 2 classes start on Thursday. So basically, you know, I had this syllabus and the whole course all written up midsummer. I was actually fortunate to be part of the certificate in online learning. So one of the courses was part of that, you know, part of the deliverables for that. But now everything is just completely changed because there's so many more students in there, and I'm just scratching my head because traditionally, like you said, I've been able to grade 25 in a reasonable amount of time, but when we're talking 125 face to face or 300 online, I'm just sitting here kind of like, I don't know, a little bit subdued.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good suggestion, Dr. Gwynn. I really think that you know, using groups and breaking it down into smaller chunks may make it a lot more manageable.
Thank you.
I thought I heard someone else was about to say something, maybe.
Terry, this is Lisa Kelly in the biology department. I'm planning to use group discussions for my ecology lecture class this fall, and I've never used group discussions before. So can you kind of walk me or us through how students would engage through the Canvas website in these this discussion format?
Absolutely. So on the students' end, the way a discussion would work, or the way a group discussion would kind of look, is a little bit different. So instead of actually going to discussions, they're going to go to people as well. So if I open, so I think maybe in this course we had a group project. So if I go to people, you're going to see that there was a week 5 group here that was created. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Okay, so there's 15 groups, and you can see the number of students in each group here. Okay, so if I click on, let me see, hopefully it will allow me to view that as a student. So if I click on student, students are going to have to go over to people and then groups. Okay, they'll see all groups, but you'll notice that there's locks on each one. It will, the one that's unlocked, that's the one that they would be able to access. So let me see if I can leave student group. Let me see if I can add the maybe this one. If I can add, no, this is unassigned students. I can't add the student one, but basically what it would look like is when a student goes into their group, they're going to see, go back to student view and people. When the student is able to access their group, on the left-hand side here, instead of seeing the course level discussions and modules and announcements and pages, instead of seeing the course level information, they're going to see the information just for their group. So essentially they would see discussion. Instead of just saying the course, people, groups, it would say course, and then it would have like their group name here. So they would know that instead of the group discussion, or instead of the course discussion, that they're actually in their own group. And so from your end, from the professor's end, we're going to leave student view. From the professor's end, when you want to assign a group discussion, you would go to discussions, add discussion. So the first thing you've got to do is actually create the groups, right? So you would create the groups and then say, well, I want this to be a group discussion. So you would just name it group, right? And then add your prompt here, and here say, well, this is going to be graded, and say this is a group discussion. Okay, so if you want to, one way of approaching it, group projects is saying, well, I want to have one group, I want to create one group set for the entire semester. So you're going to work with the same group of people. All right, that's one way of approaching it. But another way of approaching it is saying, I want to have students participate in different groups for each assignment, right? So we only created one for this course. And then this is where you select, okay, just imagine I created a group called group discussion 1, or group discussion, and say this is discussion first topic, right? So you could create a group with this same name, right? And then you would come here and say, this is a group discussion, and then you would find the group that corresponds with that assignment. Or you can even create them from here. It seems like you can create a new group from here, right within the assignment. That must be something new. So that's how it's actually handled in Canvas. So you've got group assignment and group discussions. So that's a discussion, and the process works just the same way for assignments. So when you want to create a new assignment, you would have to say this is a group assignment, and then select the corresponding group. Did that answer your question?
Yes, Terry, pretty much. By the way, are there tutorials on this on the Canvas website?
So yes, absolutely. So what you would want to do is in Canvas, click on Help on the left-hand side and say Search the Canvas Guides, and then here it's a group assignment. Group assignment. How do I add an assignment group in a course? Well, no, that's not the same thing. Group set. How do I add a group set in a course? So yes, and you can find a lot of this on YouTube as well.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Did anybody else have any other discipline specific or course level specific, or other than discipline and course level, what are some other considerations, and of course the size of the course, what are some other considerations that are worth discussing that may impact student-to-student interaction?
Hey, Terry, we also have a question here from Robert. Can anyone provide an example of a simple assessment method for a discussion? Did each student manage to enter a comment? Did they respond to a comment?
Hey, this is Steve Moore, School of Business. And I don't have a rubric, but what I write in the question for if I post a discussion, like maybe an article, and then the students have to respond to the article blind without seeing anybody else's. So they respond first. And that might, suppose that particular discussion was worth 15 points. So their initial response could be worth 5 or less, depending on how well they did. And I usually put a rubric. I usually say, okay, it has to be, 5 or more sentences, and then that answer the questions. And then I say respond to, depends, 2 or 3 of your classmates, say 2 of your classmates, with at least 5 or 6 sentences that respond directly to what one of your classmates has said. So I grade that on quality and quantity if they've responded directly in a focused comment. That's pretty easy because it's pretty small. It's only 15 points and you're talking about 3 interactions. And if you click on it, just right on Canvas, in Canvas, you can bring up just what that student put in there for their comments. So you can see them. Sometimes I have to go back to the discussion and read it in context. So it's kind of a rubric. I know I'm not quite answering your question. It's kind of a rubric and it's built into the question. You get 5 points for this, your initial answer, 5 points for each of your responses to 2 people. That's what I do.
Yep. And another way of the good part about there's several good things about the way Canvas handles this. So whenever you select or whenever you're creating a new discussion, you're going to add your topic or you're going to give it a name here and then ask the question here. So one of the things I just posted in chat is you may want to think about using the Socratic method of questioning. You know, you don't want to ask a question in which there's like a right and a wrong answer. You know, you don't want to ask something that's factual, you know, like what color is the sky or what color is grass or whatever. You want to ask probing type discussions. Okay, so you would ask that here, and then it's going to be graded. You can, you know, play around with these, but when you're actually grading a discussion, you can of course add a rubric as well. But for example, I'm going to take a look at this one. You've got something in Canvas called the speed grader. So when you're grading, for example, if you like Dr. Moore said, if you required students to respond to 1 or 2 of their peers, when you go into the speed grader, it's just going to show like this individual, right? This is her original post, and this is the responses that she gave. So instead of having to go through each discussion individually and trying to find a specific person, you can use the speed grader to kind of go through and grade quickly, especially if you asked them to create an original post and respond to X number of their peers. So it's it kind of makes it a lot better to grade in terms of the discussions. Do we have any other questions from the chat?
That's it.
Do we have any other questions or comments from the group?
Okay. Can you hear me? This is Sarah Oswald, and I have a question about creating groups related to those of us who are teaching hybrid courses where we've had to divide our classes into Group A and Group B, and we're only going to be seeing each group in the classroom once. And then, so my question, I guess, is, do you think we should divide the Canvas site for our hybrid courses into Group A and Group B from the get-go, since they'll be having on a slightly different schedule? And how does that impact their ability to all be taking the same course?
So I'll give my little tidbit. So what's happened in the School of Business, because we're understaffed, is that 2 sections. So somebody's got to mute their microphone. We'll have, you know, if I have one section of, say, a course that's called management policy, and all of a sudden I'm given a second section, which is, you're saying your A and your B. What we do is dump them all into one, because it's easier to grade and be consistent.
So let me ask a point of clarity. Was the question she was asking, is it may not necessarily be different class sections, it may be different groups. So you may have like an A and a B group of students that are registered for the same course. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so yeah, one of the ways in which would be nice, like Dr. Moore was saying, if we could actually combine sections, that would actually give that would actually create 2 or 3 distinct groups. But if they're registered for the same course, so I guess what's going to happen is they're going to be so if they're registered for the same course, they're all going to be dumped in here. They're all going to be dumped into the same section. Well, you may want to consider using groups because the way our Canvas is set up, it does not allow us to create our own sections. So you can combine a section, you can combine 2 sections that you're teaching into one Canvas course, but you can't take this one course and divide it into 2 different sections. Okay, so what I would suggest is creating groups like we were discussing before. But the only issue, or one of the challenges associated with creating groups of students that are in the same section, maybe if you wanted to maybe give the same assignment and have different due dates, is going to be that everyone in that course, no matter if they're in group A or group B, they're all going to see the same. They're all going to see the same assignments. Even if you went into assignments and said, this is a group assignment. I don't think there's an easy way of giving different due dates outside of assigning it to individuals separately. So essentially, what I'm saying is, if I go to assignments and I want to create a new assignment, it's going to ask. We're going to say, okay, this is graded, but let's see. No, I created groups, but the only options we have here is by course section or by individual student. So since we can't create our own sections, it would have to be, we would have to just assign it to each individual student, or so it's going to be this student, and then let's see, this student, and then this student, and then this student, and then this student. So this could be like your group A. And then you set the due dates here, and then you would add another group. So group A assignment may be due on this date. And group B, which could be this person, this one, and this one, may have a due date of here. So that's the only way that I can think of efficiently giving different due dates. Did that answer your question?
I think what I wanted, I just wanted to clarify creating 2 different groups in the group set and make one A and make one B and use that throughout the semester for discussions and things like that. So I guess I can do that. I don't want to divide the course into 2 sections, just 2 different groups within the group function in Canvas.
So they would have their own. They would have their own discussions and own section for that. They would have their own sort of piece of Canvas, essentially. Would they have different due dates for assignments?
Some assignments, the due date would be the same, but for discussions and other kind of interactive assignments, the due dates would be different because it would be based on which group I'm seeing in class as opposed to online, and that varies from group A to group B. This whole dividing classes into 2 groups and seeing one group in class one day and online another day, and then flipping it for the other group is something I'm still trying to get a handle on how to do that efficiently.
Yeah, one of the one of the things you may want to consider. I'm always under the assumption when I'm doing these types of presentations, I'm under the assumption that you're going to be using the Canvas gradebook, or you're going to be using Canvas to track grades and to keep up with your students that way. But if you're seeing them face to face as well, you may have you may have a different way in which you're keeping up with the grades and that sort of thing. One, I'm sorry, go ahead. Did you have a comment?
No.
Okay. So another way in which you may think about approaching your course is by having, if you're having to an A and a B group, does that mean that you're having to teach the same thing twice?
Well, that's something I'm not quite clear on yet.
Professor Oswald, I think you have two connections going. You may want to hang one of your calls up.
Yeah, I haven't been able to figure out how to do that, so I'm just going to mute myself from now on.
Okay. So one of the suggestions, a suggestion that I made to a faculty member earlier this week is I said, well, rather than teaching the same thing twice, you may want to have like an A and a B group. Say I'm going to see A students in class on, if it's Tuesday, Thursday, I'm going to have half the group in class on Tuesday and the other half is going to be online. And then on Thursday, I'm going to switch it. The group that was online Tuesday, I'm going to have them face to face, and then you can have a Webex connection in the course, and just say, well, one group is going to be face to face, and one group is going to be online, but I'm going to only teach this content, one time. And you can have like a laptop with a microphone, and that way you're seeing that way all of the students have FaceTime with you. That's one approach. Did we have any other questions from the chat?
No questions so far.
Okay. Back to my presentation. So now I just had Q&A. And if we don't have anything else, I can go ahead and wrap it up. That's my contact information. You can give me a call at extension 4074. We've also been having some synchronous type consultation sessions, and you can schedule those through our website as well. And I appreciate everyone's time today, and I'll stick around for a few minutes if somebody else has anything they would like to discuss.
Terry, I have